Testing, testing, 1, 2, 3. Testing, testing, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. Yes, it's me again. I'm back. Took a little nap. Well, not really. I just sort of sat here on my butt. But I'm feeling a little more alert. And I really wanted to be a little more productive. And frankly, this is the closest thing I can get to affordable emotional therapy. So, welcome back to Spleen Squeezins. Just tell everybody I'm back. Okay, I'm really not sure here. I'm really not sure what to think here. Got it here. Is this... I have no way of telling if this is too loud or too soft. The music in the background. Boom, 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 boom. I know how loud it sounds to me, but I have no idea how loud it sounds to you. Look, oh my, where do I begin? Where do I end? Where do I even start? I'm tired as always, but I'm going to stick through it. I'm just going to stick through it. I'm starting to wonder if I really, I don't know. Looking at some Bible passages earlier that is very blunt, the Bible is, about forgiveness. Saying Matthew 6:14. Was it Matthew 6:14? But anyway, it says if we do not forgive those, if we do not forgive others for the sins they commit against us, God will not forgive us for the sins we commit against Him. That's some heavy stuff. There's one thing about studying Bible verses and studying the Bible. What they call it, I forget what the principle is called, but you start with the obvious principles, the simplest and obvious and most straightforward and most clearly understood sections of the Bible, and you base your understanding of more difficult passages on that. If you accept the Bible as God's Word, then you accept that it is internally consistent. Then the more complicated teachings of the Bible, or the ones that cause you the most questions, should be regarded in the light of the other passages in the Bible that are much simpler and more straightforward. Because this is something to keep in mind. You are reading a 2,000-year-old book that was written in a particular dialect of Greek and Hebrew, of a culture literally 2,000 years ago and longer. If you're studying the Old Testament, between 2,000 to 6,000 years ago. And there are things about the culture and the society at that time which especially when you're studying the New Testament, you got to remember these were the books of the New Testament were letters written by the apostles to the various churches scattered around the Mediterranean area, and many of the the first four books of the Bible were written primarily to the Hebrew people. And just like reading any other, like a newspaper from Japan, or a magazine from China, or or browsing a website from Germany, you have to know something about the culture and the time and what was going on at the time, because the passages in those things are full of references which made perfect sense to the people reading the original letters at the time, but which are a bit more cryptic to us. We don't have that, and it's led to misunderstanding about certain passages of the Bible. Now, so that's why they say studies. You study. You have to. It helps to, studying the Bible first, but you also study the language that it was originally written in. Even the people that wrote for all you King James activists out there, the people that say, the King James only, the King James forever, the King James. Let's see, when was it written? 1611. Which King James? Because they revised it at least 3 times. Okay, the King James Bible is a translation of and it is a translation of the original Greek and Hebrew, and the translation itself is from a dialogue that is literally over 400 years old. The funny thing is that Baptists did not use the King James until like the 1960s or 70s. There was a big sea change due to, it involves a lot of religious and political type church politic type shenanigans that went on during that time that switched people over to the King James. It wasn't, well, actually, no, it was, I'm wrong about that. It was something like the 1920s before the Baptist churches started using the King James exclusively. So make of that what you will. Well, look, the purpose of the King James was to translate the Bible into the common language at the time. The King, so let's just say that a great deal of the message, of subtle details of the message, were lost on people as time went by. I'm not talking about people that say, "Oh, there are entire books of the Bible that are missing," and no. Not that. What I'm saying is that there are some subtleties that are lost on modern people. Now, for instance, the story about the rich young man who came to Jesus and asked him, "What deed must I do? What thing must I do to be assured of going to heaven? To enter the kingdom of heaven?" And Jesus, runs him through a rigmarole, and he says, "Okay. One thing you have left, and yes, have you obeyed the commandments?" And he said, "Oh, yes, I have obeyed them since I was a little boy." And Jesus goes, "Well, then there's one thing left. All you have to do is give away all your money, and then come follow me." And the guy turned around and went off grieving. because he was very wealthy. Now, there are some things that you have to consider. First of all, Jesus had just given a message, a sermon about how salvation was not something that you bought. And second of all, this young man came forward. He was basically saying, "Oh, I have been a good little boy ever, my entire life, and the Bible flat out says, if we say if we claim that we do not sin, we lie, and the truth is not in us." And furthermore, he was asking, what good deed? Basically, he was asking, what work or deed must I do to get into heaven? And Jesus' whole message was, salvation is not to be by works. We're not going to get in heaven by being good. It's a gift of grace. We have to recognize that we are sinners. Admit that we cannot save ourselves. Turn from our own way of doing things and turn from our sin, turn to Jesus and accept him as Savior. That was the message of Christ's entire life, his death, burial, and resurrection. But people overlook that, and you've got a lot of people that try and use that as a proof. See, all you dirty rich Christians ought to be giving away all your money if you really believe the Bible. No, it's not what it says. That's not what the passage was about. Second of all, most people don't know that the area that Jesus was witnessing, sermonizing in, he's this young man in that community. In that particular area, basically, if you were rich, it was because you were crooked. The only people that in that area that were wealthy were people who had collaborated with the Roman government to cheat their neighbors out of their property and possessions and everything else, and they had been cut off a big fat slice as payment. If this man was a rich young man in that area, if he was Jewish and he was rich living in that area, it was because he was crooked as a dog's hind leg, and his wealth was ill-gotten gains. And not in the sense that everybody thinks that the banker's crooked. These really were the circumstances. The Roman Empire moved into that area. They basically just plundered the people and then gave out the loot to their favorites. What Jesus was doing is pointing, among other things, he was pointing out to this young man, you're sitting here saying that you're basically claiming to be sinless. You're looking for some good deed to be a clincher to get into heaven, and you sit there wearing with your pockets full of stolen gold. And the other passage, it goes on. He says, they ask, you have to understand, in that culture, in that society, being wealthy was considered a sign of blessing from God. Psychological split there, because everybody knew that these people, the tax collectors were crooked, and the people who were on the take were crooked. But at the same time, one of the solidest teachings in their history was about Abraham and Isaac and Solomon, and how God, because they were holy men, God blessed them with great riches. And the story of Job is even about a man who was blessed with great, tremendous wealth, and even after he went through his trials, was blessed with even more. The idea of God blessing somebody with prosperity was not exactly anathema. The idea, and Jesus came forward, said it was easier for a rich man to go through the eye of a needle. It was easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to enter into the kingdom of heaven. And he was basically telling them that despite how holy the wealthy pass themselves off, these guys weren't going to get in. Based on their holiness, and then he went on, if they, and this was what the apostles asked him, the disciples. They said, well, if these guys aren't getting in, what does that say about anybody else? Who has any hope? That was basically, he was basically saying the equivalent of, the most blessed, and these people were regarded as. In spite of everything, they were regarded as righteous because they were so wealthy and had been blessed with prosperity. And Jesus went on, with man it is impossible, but with God all things are possible. He was saying that this man's salvation was not going to come through his works or his good deeds or his filling up the offering plate with his last paycheck. It was going to come from God. It was going to come from Jesus. And there's other little cultural details. For instance, the passage that talks about if you call your brother a fool, you're in danger of hellfire. You ever heard that one? You have to read the whole passage, and again, you have to know the culture of the time. One of the things is that calling somebody a fool, the actual words that it could be grounds for basically a lawsuit, or basically the equivalent of a lawsuit, or a duel to the death. Because it was a calling somebody, the word they translated "thou fool," you call them that. That was that put you in it was the equivalent of slapping somebody in the face with a white glove, And when it says in danger of hellfire, the passage is in danger of Gehenna. Where the worm dieth not and the fire is not quenched. Well, Gehenna was basically a gigantic trash pit where the city dumped its garbage, and they had fires going there constantly to burn the trash, to burn the garbage and prevent the spread of disease. If you were, that's where they dumped the bodies of criminals. So what he was saying is that you go around you go around calling your brother a fool, just basically calling people out. You're running the risk of ending up with your dead carcass, your dead executed carcass being thrown in a trash heap. These were cultural references that anybody at the time understood explicitly. The way you or I would understand, if somebody came up to you and asked a question about a meme on the internet, you'd understand what they were talking about. So it takes that's just reading the King James is just the start. Just reading a translation of the Bible is just the start. You will unearth some surprising things. I have completely forgotten what it was I was going to talk about originally. I would ask, once again, as always, I really need to run a banner across the side. Please say something. Let's see. Is there a... image slideshow, media source scene, text. I'm adding a little thing on the scroll as these alignment, left, vertical alignment, center, bottom. Here, I got an idea. I'm trying to add some info so I don't have to keep repeating myself. Go to www.rhjunior.com to check out my archives of comics and pictures and arts and stuff. And, I have no idea how I managed to do that. Oh, there we go. I actually managed to turn the text upside down. Hooray. There. I've locked them. There. Good. Yay. Hooray. Zippity frickin' doodah. Ah, yes. Forgiveness. And I look in the mirror. I have got so many sins I have to sit down and confess to God every single day. Ones that I can't seem to shake. And one of the big ones is, I want to, am I forgiving? Am I forgiving? I am so, because anybody who's listening to me knows I am so angry at the world all the time. I'm angry about political issues. I'm angry about religious issues. I'm angry about social issues. I'm angry about this. I'm angry about that. Various political figureheads, just. And I'm like, what constitutes forgiveness? Because, you know for a fact that people need to be held accountable for what they do. And if you a society, a society of people that does not hold people accountable, well, ends up looking like this one. And where does our individual, where, just how can, try? I've got things that people have done to me, and I struggle with forgiving them for things in my past, and but I'll say this much, one of the things that was pointed out to me, I've been, uh, you can forgive them, but it still hurts. The things that happen to you still are going to hurt. So I suppose that it's you can't measure forgiveness by how much or how little the past hurts you. Beg your pardon. Pardon me. uh, I just. Am I capable of being more than I am? How do you forgive people, but at the same time keep a fire in your belly to fight for what you know is right? And should you? Should you keep that fire in your belly or not? There's some hard questions, hard questions. And sometimes it feels like God isn't very forthcoming with any comforting answers. Sometimes accepting the truth means accepting some things that seem pretty awful. I'm too competitive. I'm too combative. I'm a lump of dough physically. I'm old. I'm fat. Uh, I'm basically disabled because of my the condition of my legs. Um, and it's laughable that I am so combative, so hot and angry and ready for a fight all the time. I'm a joke physically, and it's made a joke of me emotionally too. Because in a real conflict, I'd fold like wet toast. In a real physical type confrontation, That's another question you got to ask. Am I peaceful or am I just a coward? Am I meek or am I weak? I really need some feedback here. I really wish somebody would come in and start talking with me and chatting with me. I need to be working, and I just don't. I need to be drawing. I need to be working. I need to be doing a lot of things. I just don't seem to have any motivation. I don't know. I just don't know what I'm missing, what I'm lacking. It'd be embarrassing if it turned out to be a vitamin shortage or something. Oh, my stencil is missing. Stencil. Wacom tablet. That's no good. I've got 3 stencils and only one of them works on the pad. It's aggravating. Actually, I've got 5. All from different models. Don't ask how that happens. I'm really, really sick of this music, you know it? Yeah, well, fully on it. No more music. Probably be easier on the bandwidth this way, too. This is rainymood.com. Plays rain and thunder showers in the background. Helps you mellow out. So angry. I don't know whether I'm tired, or I'm angry, or I'm anxious. It's a good thing that the whole child psychoanalysis, I'd probably be on like, I'm lucky that the whole attention deficit disorder thing didn't really take off until long after I was out of high school. With my emotional issues, I would have probably been on like half a dozen pills. Of course, if I needed them, that would probably have been better, but I don't know. It's hard to trust anything, the problem exists, the situation exists, the condition exists, but that's not a comfort when the doctors diagnose everybody with it and hand out pills for it like they were a Pez dispenser. No, I don't feel like punching anything, really. Don't feel angry, and kind of thing. Just anxious, I suppose. I've not been in church in years. I've not been a member of a church in years. And, because of my condition, I'm no longer physically able to get into a vehicle and drive over and attend. And so, I'm not a member of any church. And it has led me to be a very terribly lonely Christian. It's bad for me. It's bad for anyone. If you have accepted Christ as your Savior, you need to be around fellow Christians, fellow believers to be healthy, to maintain an even keel. Of course, being around other Christians brings on a whole other kind of anxiety. I think I'm 98% stressed by body weight. Uh, I don't know. Wouldn't it be nice if you could take like a blood test for clinical depression or anxiety? A breathalyzer, something. I don't know. No, you have to rely on highly subjective opinions and analysis by other people, and your own highly subjective opinions. As a Christian, even as a born again Christian, someone who believes in eternal salvation, uh, I'm plagued with constant irrational worries and fears about the state of my soul. Really, if you're going to be concerned about something, that's you know that about sums it up. You don't need the fate of your eternal soul. Everything else is secondary after that. Let me note something. Let me shift over to another track. Consider this. Have you ever heard some people, Christians, pastors, religious figures, they complain that everybody makes a big deal in the news about about no, no, nobody one of the complaints my father used to have a lot was that he probably still does, but when I was younger he complained that nobody, everybody in politics, nobody cares about the moral or ethical behavior of politicians, but when they start talking about taxes, that's when everybody starts paying attention. The only thing people care about is their taxes. And I had to think about it. I thought about that for a long while. And it dawned on me that that's where the rubber meets the road. That's what they should be concerned about. Look, you can talk about the ethical issues. You're angry because the politicians are going out. Summed up, you're angry because the politicians are going out, taking your money and going out and doing horrible things with it. Horrible, immoral things. That deeply upset and offend you, and that you believe that anger God. Which is a darn good reason to be concerned, if you ask me. If you believe in God and you believe that He's angry about what your government is doing, that's a good reason to be concerned. But let's put it this way: if how are they able to do all these horrible things? How is it that Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton are able to do all the horrible things they did? How is it that Obama was able to wreak such havoc? How is it that you just go down the list of how is it that Ted Kennedy was able to get away with taxpayers' money? You're objecting because you're upset because the government is going out, taking your money from you and doing things with it, not only that you do not understand, but you absolutely do not approve of. You take their money away, they can't do these horrible things. So yes, taxes are pretty much the most important issue. Oh, testing for amino acids. Is there like a home test? I don't know about home tests. I mean, I have fundamental objections to poking myself with pointy things. Then again, I don't want to, have to galump all the way to the hospital just to have somebody test me to see if I'm depressed. Say, guess what? You got depression. And I'm like, yay? No. Well, I haven't been tested. I haven't been analyzed or psychoanalyzed or blood tested or anything like that. The Japanese have toilets that you pee in them and they analyze your blood. When you pee, your urine is pretty full of old dead blood cells. Well, I don't know if dead is right, but they're able to do. They can analyze your blood sugar content and a few dozen other things, and some company built a toilet. You peed in it, you flushed it, it whizzed around whizzed around like a centrifuge, and got all these readings off your urine before it flushed it. And I'm like, 21st century living, baby. But that's the thing of it. We complain about money and power, money and power. That's what it's all about. Uh, we give our politicians all this money and all this power, and then we're upset with what we do with it, and then we think that we can stop them from using all that money and power by giving them more money and power. Think about this: campaign finance reform. Campaign finance reform. That's an oxymoron. Campaign finance reform laws. It's an oxymoron. It doesn't work. You can't. It's a self-neutralizing concept. The government. You want to reform campaign finance? Erase the campaign finance laws. Every American citizen should be free to do whatever they damned well please with their money, especially when it comes to financing political speech. If you're willing to throw down $1 billion, if you're a multimillionaire and you're willing to throw down a couple of $1 million on some local politician, go for it. That's where the rubber meets the road. That's putting your money where your mouth is. You're putting your blood and treasure, on this politician to win. That should be an innate right of any human being. And yes, rich people should be allowed to have those rights too. I'm sorry, we've demonstrated that dumping millions and millions of dollars on a politician can only affect an election campaign result only so much. Because look at it, Trump won. Trump won, and his adversaries. They outspent him. Reagan won, even though his opposition outspent him. Bush Senior and Bush Junior, same story. The only really one, they should be funded by American citizens, and two, the same old-fashioned laws against perjury, libel, and slander should still apply. As the campaign finance laws currently stand, Reagan probably would have never got off the ground. as it was, he had to spend so many hours at rubber chicken banquets trying to raise money for his campaign and for his reelection. And he said he hated it, because he had other things he ought to be doing. And it's campaign finance reform that causes those problems. Because I'm sorry, the dishonest people, Democrat, find ways around those laws constantly. A fat lot of good it does to have all these campaign finance reform laws when the Clintons were getting money from Russia and China. And everybody else in the system was covering for them. That's what I mean. It is actual story. Actually, it's supposed to be an actual historical. It's actual story out of ancient history, ancient China. There was some guy, philosopher, really full of himself, and this guy in China, he wrote out this long windbaggy poem, praising himself about how enlightened he was. And one of the passages was, "The 8 winds could not move me." And he sent it to a friend of his who lived across the lake to look at. And his friend took one look at it, sent it back with one kanji painted on it. It's basically the Chinese equivalent of the word fart. And naturally, this didn't sit too well with the would-be philosopher. And he got on a boat, rowed all the way across that lake just to chew his friend's ear out. Oh, how could you say such a thing to me? And his friend was waiting for him. And he said, the guy looked him dead in the eye and said, 8 winds couldn't move you. 8 winds couldn't move you, but one fart got you all the way across the lake, didn't it? I like to beat myself. And it's a noble and comforting thing to realize that some things are eternal. Trolling friends and fart jokes. People are the same all the time. They went down in they found writings on the walls in Pompeii. And it was things like so and so's mother is a whore, and and so has a big dick, and just the usual crass graffiti you find in any high school locker room. There was one there was one Celtic Viking tomb down in the caves, and these complex, and there was writing. There was writing in the original language of this tribe up on the wall, up near the ceiling. I think it was something like a 12-foot ceiling. It was a pretty big. And they got up there, and they didn't, and it took years for them to figure out how to translate. They finally found their Rosetta Stone and translated it. And they went back and they climbed up there and they looked at it and they wrote it down. They translated it and it said, "This writing is really high, isn't it?" Trolled by somebody who'd been dead for thousands of years. What can you say? Okay, which one was it you were liking? Me, my favorite of those stories is the fart joke. I'm like, well, welcome to the beautiful pageantry of Japan. Pull my finger. The Chinese one rather. But well, there you go. Yeah. I'm noticing all these stories. Here's one to think about. Now you know about the Green Lanterns. The Green Lanterns in the comic books. And their magic. And their rings that. Their cosmic rings that can do anything. And you probably also know that they recently expanded that concept. They literally have lanterns, ring bearers for every color of the rainbow. Red for rage, orange for greed and acquisition, yellow for fear, green's for willpower, blue is for hope, indigo is for compassion, and violet is for love. Now, and then you go over, for instance, Star Wars. They have the light side and the dark side. I've got my own philosophies and theories about that. Going on the expanded universe that what little of the expanded universe I've read and that sort of thing. Not very much. I mean, maybe 2 or 3 books. At most I've seen, and I've browsed a few things. But the light side is calm, peace, passive. All that, and the dark side is all rage and anger and hate and and all that. Now, you'll notice, what I noticed was missing from both. You know what I noticed was missing from both? A sense of humor, laughter, amusement. Humor. Both of them, they have this emotional spectrum, and everybody in it has a stick up their butt, which really doesn't make any sense. Because one of the most common things in cultures, in any culture, in any human culture, the trickster, the jokester, the jester, the comedian, the prankster, the trickster sage. It's of note that for instance, most of the trickster figures are also teachers. Coyote was supposed to have taught the Native Americans how to plant corn, that kind of thing. Trickster heroes, trickster gods, however you want to, trickster mentors. There's no sense of humor. Now, talking about the Jedi. Now, think about it. In the most recent movies, the old Jedi, let's put it this way. Yeah, the old Jedi Order and the old Jedi way of doing things had to go. Not the way they did it. And not for the reasons they had. Because the people working on the Star Wars movies now, they're not trying to they're not trying to expand on the universe. They're trying to erase it. They're trying to castrate it, to geld it, to feminize it, to emasculate it. what's her name? The woman who's basically been put in charge of this dumpster fire. She's been seen. She and her friends, all her women friends, are running around with T-shirts that say "The Force is female." They are trying to equate the light side with feminism and the dark side with masculinity. And feel free to laugh at me for oh, you're just being paranoid. You're hyper. You're overstating things. Yeah, fine, but feel free to wait for the next movie and they make it explicit, even more explicit than it already is. But the Jedi philosophy, it's a dog's breakfast. Really, it's what they cobbled together out of Eastern mysticism in on Beverly Hills. The idea that fear and anger lead to hate and violence. No, no. I'm sorry. I'm Christian, and I know for a fact that uh, Jesus got incredibly angry at several points. He also mourned. And to go by how he prayed in the Garden of Gethsemane, he had fear. He experienced everything we did, and yet he did not sin. So, the Jedi philosophy, as it was portrayed in the prequels, is a mess. They're unethical. I mean, they take children by force and indoctrinate them in their cult. And you got the apologists. Oh, no, 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 no! They wrote down here in the footnotes that the Jedi only took children that were given voluntarily. And I'm like, yeah, like any parent and any bumpkin from some backwater planet is going to say no to a guy with a lightsaber. They steal these children away when they're and deliberately go out of their way to break all ties with their family, indoctrinate them into their cult, deny them even personal property rights. They're supposed to have no money, no possessions, no anything. And yet you'll note that Yoda and the rest of the masters were sitting up there farting through silk boxers. And use them as cannon fodder. For their various wars and crusades. That's screwed up. I don't care how mellow they sounded. And worst of all, they taught kids to suppress their emotions, to fear them, to fear and hate the most natural emotions, the most natural part of being a living creature. Okay, we have life forms on this planet that do not feel fear or anger or love. Yeah, they weren't allowed to be. They weren't allowed to fall in love. They weren't allowed to. They weren't allowed to get married. They weren't allowed to fall in love. They weren't allowed to have anybody that was too close to them, even. But we have life forms like that. We keep them in clay pots and water them twice a week. And the other group that we have like that we call psychopaths. No wonder the dark. No wonder the Sith kept managing to find new recruits among people that left the Jedi Order. They probably left it. They were already at the snapping point when they left. Any world philosophy that says unconditional love is a path to the dark side, uh, you know, set that thing on fire and toss it in the dumpster. Uh, Now, of course, you got a lot of the fans that came up with the idea. I don't know whether this is canon, with the expanded universe, or whether it's just fandom. But they came up with the idea of the gray Jedi, the people that walk the middle road, neither light nor dark. And I looked at, there is no peace, there is, their slogans and everything, and I thought these guys, these so-called gray Jedi, would have bigger sticks up their butt than the regular Jedi had within no time flat. Because we always have to maintain the balance between the light and the dark, and that means we can't get too light. So we've got to help out the dark this time, and we're conflicted because we need to let things. No, they'd have bigger sticks up their butt than Yoda and his trained monkeys did. I thought and also it is canon that in the Star Wars universe there are people who are Force users, and there are entire planets of people that were Force users, and groups of people that were Force users scattered throughout the galaxy who were not Jedi. There were some, they were not Sith either. They were not dark side, but they regarded the Jedi as enemies because in the past the Jedi tried to wipe them out. Now, my thought is that if there was a third way group of Jedi, Force users, they would not be passive like the Jedi, and they would not be obsessed with balance like the Gray. The thing that would distinguish them is that they would be what I think of as pro-life. That unlike the Jedi, they draw unlike the Jedi, the Jedi draw strength from being peace and passive and disconnected. The Sith draw power and strength from being pissed off all the time, and rage, anger, hate. What about a group of Jedi? What about a group of Force users who drew strength from the Force from positive emotions? From passionate love, from righteous anger, from unbounded joy. That would be a real third way group of the Force. They would be they would be to put the emphasis on it. They would be devoted to the living Force, the thing that connects all living things. And they would embrace those connections. They would say, through anger, the Force teaches us to seek justice. Through joy, the Force teaches us to celebrate. Through sorrow, the Force teaches us to mourn. Through love, the Force teaches us compassion, and thus so we live. Let's put it this way: picture a group of Jedi. Except instead of sitting around gazing at their navels and saying we are one with the Force, they would be the guys sitting on the cockpit of the Millennium Falcon, flying the Kessel Run for the third time that week and smashing cans of, empty Red Bull cans on their forehead. Ah! That was awesome! The idea being that they live life to the fullest that they possibly can, in all the best ways. Now that's my idea of a third way Force user. Now, one of these days I'm going to break down and actually write a fan fiction of that. And one of the things that they would value would be a tremendous sense of humor. These are the kind of guys that if they found themselves in the Jedi, if they found themselves among the Jedi elders, they would pants Mace Windu. And I think there have been several people that have written fan fictions about different varieties of the lanterns. The Green Lanterns. They've thrown another one. One girl wrote a fan fiction. It's still ongoing about what are the rabbit people on Final Fantasy? That their thing, she becomes a teal lantern, Teal lantern, with a teal ring and a teal lamp, and she draws on joy, and I'm like, okay, that's a good start. Give me some more. Give me some more. My idea would be a group of Green Lanterns Green Lanterns, not green, but they get their power from humor. And the running thing would be the old quote from Roger Rabbit. You could have done that any time. No, only when it was funny. This is I have to admit that My Little Pony, the interest, when I first heard it, I thought laughter, that really doesn't mesh well. I also thought they should have spelled it out more clearly, that the element of magic was friendship. Let's be explicit about it. People aren't always that subtle. Anyway, the idea, this is what made introducing, the element of laughter as a very, a very innovative, very daring, very innovative, very novel idea. That saying that laughter was an important element of life. I've always believed that myself. I've said it's sometimes laughter is about the only comfort out there. Sometimes it's the only weapon, the only medicine, the only philosophy, the only teacher that we have. maybe I'm too obsessed with it. Uh, maybe I give too much precedent to humor and its importance when I should be giving more importance to more, what one would call more spiritual things, more things of the divine. But I can't help feeling that humor, laughter, the precious gifts from God. I've always felt that I don't have a Bible passage I could point to. Well, a merry heart doeth good like a medicine. But I've always it was is when you live in a religious household, laughter is one of the few things that doesn't get overlapped by one taboo or another. And even then, you got to be careful about what jokes you laugh at. That's not funny. You know, the old joke goes, you can't have any wine or women. Sing all you want. Laughter is about one of the few clean, good feelings out there. Everything else I've noted is tainted in some way or has heavy obligations that come with it. One of the risks of humor is that you will treat morally serious issues trivially. But I think that is of all the risks, that is the least. Other pleasures, the consequences of them going off the rails are far more severe. It seems like the more profound a pleasure is, the more intense a pleasure is, the more dangerous it is, and the more responsibility is required to exercise it freely. And some pleasures are just outright destructive. But an honest, clean laugh. I felt that I've always a little bit of me has always rejoiced whenever I managed to make somebody laugh, because I felt that just something about that. It always made me feel like that is something that goes out forever. There's an old saying: "A thing of beauty is a joy forever." I think the same thing of an honest laugh. kind of wonder if it isn't, the reason I treasure life. So it just releases, the endorphins. A solid laugh releases. To get all clinical and anal about it, uh, you know, just an honest laugh staves off the effects of depression. It's probably why so many people so many people who have, issues with depression, they get into comedy. Consider, you know, Robin Williams. It was a man. He finally lost his fight with clinical depression, and a lot of the things he went through, he had a reason. He had good reason to be depressed too. Divorces, losses, struggle with addiction. You know, it was an uphill run for him his entire life. But he's a brilliant comedian, vulgar as heck, and I can't say I cared for his politics either. I mean, brilliantly funny, just manically funny. I think that was, I don't know, I think that was him fighting back against the depression. I think that the last thing that, I mean, he had it hard. After all the things he went through, they found out, I believe I forget what it was, degenerative, I think, I forget what it was. I believe they said they were signs of Alzheimer's. I forget whether it was Parkinson's or Alzheimer's or, well, basically, he had incurable disease setting in, and he just found that out shortly before he committed suicide. I guess that had to be the straw that broke the camel's back, you know. Now Richard Pryor. Now, what happened to him? Richard Pryor. Another vulgar, but there's no denying he was brilliantly funny. I'm looking up to see what it was he passed on from. Uh, what did he die of? Uh, he died of a heart attack, technically, but he had been ill for years with multiple sclerosis. I remember they were doing some special on TV when he was still alive, and he came out on a wheelchair, and they were giving him a Lifetime Achievement Award. They rolled him up there, and they handed him the trophy, and he held it. He was holding on to. The man was a comedian right to the very end. He was sitting there, and they wheeled him up there, and everybody's applauding, all serious, and and dramatic, heartfelt moment. And they give him this statuette, and he's sitting there holding it, and he motions with his free hand for somebody to put a microphone up to his mouth so he can speak. And somebody holds a microphone up to his mouth. And he says, I would like to thank you all. And I would like to thank you all for this heavy ass trophy. And the audience just busted up, and they went, oh, they took it from him before he dropped it. That's another man. He, addiction, depression. He tried to commit suicide early on. He failed, but dang, he put one hell of an effort into it. He was drunk. He was drunk and high, and and that didn't do anything for his misery. So he poured gasoline over himself and set himself on fire. But he survived, and they patched him back up, and they fixed him back up. And doggone, if he wasn't making jokes about that in his show before the end of the next year, he was up on stage. I saw a clip of this. He was up on stage. He said, "Yeah, you know about my suicide. You know what I did. I did. I'll tell you that." He said, "Let me tell you something. That will sober you up quick." He said, "Whoa, what's this? What's this yellow and blue stuff on my fingers? That's fire!" And he said, "Oh yeah, y'all pointing at each other, going, oh." And he says, I hear y'all telling jokes on me." And he pulled out a box of matches, and he took one out and he lit it. And he sort of walked it in front of him. He said, walked it back and forth in front of him in his hand. And he said, "What's that?" "Oh, it's Richard Pryor running down the street." Like, oh. He's just... Oh, good night. Just not afraid. The one time I felt I really did something good, that I feel that God blessed me for it and smiled on me for it. This happened. This has happened a couple of times. I've had people write me and tell me that my comics and my stories got them through a period of terrible depression. And then, I wasn't the only one that they were reading, obviously. Otherwise, I've been really bored. But they said my comics helped get them through a time of terrible depression. And part of me was like, oh wow, I'm so moved. And another part of me is, wow, wow, no pressure. But not to be cynical or nothing, but I was just startled and sobered by that. And I when it's interesting. The timing was at a time when I was feeling kind of down about myself and about things that were going on. I hope I've done more than I think I have. I hope that what my prayer is that my fears are unfounded. That I have that I am a child of the King. That I have served Him. That what little I've done in this life, at least some of it, pleased Him. But when I got those emails, it was almost like getting a letter from God saying, you did good there, not bad. I think that's what so many Christians need more than anything is just somebody somewhere to say to them, well done, and know that the words are straight from God. Well, that particular image was kind of pointless. The great big long column there. I have a tendency to just stash away pictures in files and forget about them. A lot of them that I put away, and a lot of them are really long images with important to know type of information. I think I've got a copy of the U.S. Constitution saved on my computer disk somewhere. Seemed kind of important, don't you think? I've got a copy of the King James hanging from my keychain and a USB card. Now, there's a thought that I think ought to be ground into people's heads. If you can't defend your rights, you don't have any. And if you have to ask your lords and masters permission to carry the means to defend yourself, and they'll allow you maybe a little pop gun. No, you don't have rights. You can't defend them. You cannot defend your rights only if you are only allowed to carry. If you only carry what you are permitted by those who you defend your rights from. It's a long, dark night of the soul, I suppose. Some days I just feel unfit to walk among men. Tobias Brown has been waiting for this image for a while. I've been. Let's switch this off here. Switching over. Got to add a few more things to this and then colorize it. But first, I got to find the email. Look up the finer details. Just a minute. Grinding away slowly. Come on, computer, giddy up. Okay, let's see. Commissions. Come on. Giddy up. Okay. Oh, yes, I've got another one from Arctic Fire. Let's see. Joshua Thompson. Gray. Gray with black. Okay. Outfit steampunk. He's definitely expecting me to fit a lot onto creatures that don't even normally wear pants. Let's see here. What we do here is up, edit, undo, edit, undo, new layer. Let's get the other one to see if no, that's not it. File, open. Here we go. Is this the same? Yes. Okay. working with the original layer, new layer. I'll just work with this one here. Let's see. And I put the clothes on a separate layer. That way I can make any tiny adjustments later. Let's see. Goggles. Forgot the goggles. Yes. Some days it just flies out, and other days it just doesn't. Yeah. You got to make sure all your lines are closed up. it's gone numb. Oh, so is my leg. Oh. That's the downside of sitting in this broken down chair. Sitting it wrong and you cut out a circulation or various appendages. Yeah, if I sit in the other chair, I have the same problem. I just can't win sometimes. I really can't. I'd be more impressed with the steampunk fandom if I saw some actual, like, steampunk tech. It wouldn't have to be something, complex, if, or hyper, innovative or anything. It's just, like if the thing is, they take a Victorian costume, glue some gears to it, and call it a day. Or they use take some Nerf dart shooters, spray them down with bronze paint, glue on a couple of gears, ta-da, steampunk. And I'm like, look, steampunk technology, many of the things in steampunk actually exist. I mean, can you imagine some guy who's a fan of steampunk driving up in a Stanley steamer? That was an actual brand name. That was one of the brand names of the steam-powered cars. One of the better made ones too. At the turn of the century, the turn of the 20th century. Or if somebody actually built something with Victorian technology, clockwork, gears, etc., that actually worked. That's what I'm saying. Is they take the show, but nobody really goes that far. Nobody tries to. Nobody actually tries to make something genuinely steampunk. Everything is just a cheap prop. Mix. If you're going to carry around a brass telescope, carry around a real brass telescope. If you're going to wear goggles with all sorts of magnifying, real, try it. I would be way more impressed. The whole thing about this steampunk ethos is the idea that that things were made nicer back then. They were classier, they were better made, and there was more optimism, more welcome innovation, and but nobody really tries for the brass ring. You know what I'm saying? Don't know if I'm getting my idea across very clearly. Or build something with a Stirling engine. Now that would impress me. Stirling engine was about the last really big innovation before the electronics age sort of smothered things over. It was invented by a preacher, Scottish preacher. The men in his parish worked around steam engines, and he had to bury quite a few of them because the dang things are so dangerous. People getting burnt, everything from being drenched in scalding steam to having the dang things explode on them. And he designed the Stirling engine as an alternative to the boiler-driven steam engine. And but the thing of it is, about the time he came out with his patent is when they started producing small electronic motors, and that basically was where most of the innovation would have gone, where something like a Stirling engine would have been ideal. Whoops, I just realized what I did wrong here. fantasy fans, they've got the excuse that, well, magic and unicorns and dragons are pretty much on the totally impossible list. But when you talk steampunk, you're talking about stuff that should be feasible on some level. At least some of it, you know? But you never see anything but you never see anybody trying to actually make steampunk things. You see them, like I said, opening up an old clock, spray painting all the parts inside bronze, and then gluing them to something. Um, it doesn't even have to be something new. Make something old. Renovate. Rebuild an old Victorian something or other. I don't know what. You know, Impress me. Surprise me. I'm not really. I can't say I'm really impressed by the fact that you redecorated your laptop to look like a old-fashioned mechanical typewriter with a boiler attached. You're not exciting me here. Pardon. Merge layers. Okay. No. So many little errors, so many little glitches. I don't know why I feel. I've reached a point where I can't really analyze my own feelings. I can't know. I just feel bad. I can't say whether I feel sad or scared or uncertain, anxious. I think would be a word for it. You know, it's like something's bothering me and I can't put my finger on it. I'm anxious about something and I can't put my finger on it, and it's a real drag. Let me tell you. Too many things, you know. It's just too many things troubling me. It's never one, one really huge big thing. That's the thing of it. Is that one of the things that television really gets wrong. Popular culture and television, and movies and everything gets really wrong about emotional issues. It's never just one thing. It's never just one big event. Um, when you're talking about, well, for instance, like when somebody slides into, when somebody goes from good to evil, right? It's never one big gigantic fall. Though one big gigantic fall might start you in that direction. It's little things, day in, day out. You know, it's a fall that you take one day at a time. You know, you have a day you decide you're just going to let one little thing slide. You're just going to just let things, one little thing slide. You're going to be you're just going to be a little bit cruel today, or you decide that you're not going to go to the trouble of being kind to this one person, or treating them fairly, or you decide it's by inches, and the next day you decide you'll do it again, just a little bit more, and again and again and over and over and over until finally there you are. robbing a bank, you know, or you know, nobody falls all at once, with the exception maybe of Adam and Eve. You know, it's never just one bite of the fruit. You know, and when you're suffering from you know, and it goes for a lot of things. You don't end up an alcoholic all, you know, and you know, from one binge drinking event. You know, but you don't end up you don't end up you know, suicidal, you know, from one bad day. You know, contrary to that. Contrary to what the Joker thought in that one special edition comic, you know, it takes more than just one bad day to make somebody, you know, just go completely off the rails. The slide into such things, it's a death by a thousand cuts. You know, you know the rent's overdue, and the bills haven't been paid, and you know, and you know, and the your I don't know, your dog puked on the carpet, and you've come down sick with something, and or you and your car is broken down, and you know, just cumulative, dozens of things, but you know, they never, you know, they never stop coming, and they never quite get better, they never go away. It's you know, you aren't broken, people aren't broken by life so much as ground away. Whether you're talking a slide into evil, or a slow descent into suicidal depression, or a nervous breakdown, it didn't happen all at once, and it didn't happen for just one reason. But you wouldn't know that to watch the movies, you know. Wouldn't know that to watch the average TV show. It's always you know, one particular thing. You know, like you know, the Joker falls in a vat of acid, and you know, he goes completely bug nuts. Excuse me a minute. Hello, who's this? Hello, hello. Must have been a wrong number or something. gave myself a splinter. Just a second here. It takes me a bit of effort to reach down and get to my ankle. Really nasty sensation sliding along the edge of a piece of plywood. Just a second. Let's see. Where's that stupid cover? No, that's not it. Don't really care if it is or it isn't anymore. Just get. It's always one thing or the other, you know. Yeah. I need like cushions for my feet or something. Bloody hurts. Do something like that. Alright. Hard part about steampunk is all the brass. Getting the metallic colors right is tricky. And do. Oh, forgot his other wing here. Forgot to put this guy's wing on the other side here. Where'd that stylus go? That's not right either. can't get the tone just right. The easy way to do it, easy way to get a lighter, paler shade, uh, just throw a little, turn the opacity down to about 50%, and then hit it with a shot of white to make it lighter. Or black to make it darker. I have to keep checking my references here. Getting that exact shade of brown or black or white or gray. Boy, what a pain in the butt. So guys, this little hippogriff guy is supposed to be blue with red highlights, and I'm just at a loss as to where I'm supposed to put the red highlights. Could go anywhere. One of the things I miss about using my old art program is that it was way easier to get patterns and stuff in things. Oh, come on. It's always fun when you have to get it pinpoint accurate or it fills the wrong darn section. The guy that commissioned has said, draw some sort of invention in his arms. I don't care what, you make it. You decide. So, a steampunk set of bagpipes. Okay. And away we go. Let's see here. And just is a picture coming through here? I'd hate to think that I'm. Yeah, good. Yeah, The Killing Joke. That was the name of the comic. Steampunk, steam-powered rather, uh, devices like I described. Those are old hat. They existed. They were all they were already around back in the days of yore. They just didn't last because electrical and internal combustion engine, electrical motors and the internal combustion engine outperformed them. That was it in a nutshell. Still gotta figure out where to put those red highlights. Alright, let's see. Okay. Oh, beg your pardon. Big yawn. That's stuck under my leg. Alright, there we go. I'm going to assume he means on the ends of his feathers. It's pretty much the only thing I can think of, really. Now, for those of you who don't know, just random thought. I'm talking about various things. I play World of Warcraft. Yeah. Cheapest entertainment you can get. $16 a month. $15 a month. And no crappy movies like you know Netflix only costs $14 a month, and I'm like, yeah, and you regret every penny. They're just chintzy. They're chintzy. They're trying to get, they got all these, tens, how many years, over 100 years of movie making to pick from. Over 100 years of movie making. And they pick the tackiest crap they possibly can. Just they load up, they top load the site every month with movies nobody wanted to watch. The Further Adventures of Ant Boy. Seriously? You're looking at this and you're thinking, I get to watch all these movies for only $16 a month, and you're thinking, you know what, what did I do to deserve this punishment? Very vividly colored, I'll say that much. Hmm. Ouch. Seriously contemplating shaving my beard off again. I wear a beard, simple, it's psychological warfare, really. I am premature. I'm 47, and the only reason my hair isn't totally white is because it's uh, just is gone to a sort of a dingy gray instead. I've but I've let it grow out. I let my beard and my hair grow out for the very simple psychological fact. I shave off my beard, I look like a fat bum living in a trailer. I have a great big grayish white beard on my face. I look like a sad little old man. I won't lie. I look like a sad little old man. And generally, I find this may just be bias on my part. This may be a personal bias, cludging up the experiment, so to speak. But I have noticed that when I have the beard, service tends to be a little bit more just a hair more polite to me. People in general tend to be a hair more polite to me, and and a little more tolerant or pleasant than when I go in. I've shaved it off, and I've got I've got even when I'm clean shaven, they come and look at me and go and it's just slightly less. Mm, okay. Okay, I finished that up and I've sent it off to its recipient. So that's one more job done. One more job done. One more job down. We've got to wait and hear if he gives a final approval, of course. But, anyway, there's been lots of expansions in World of Warcraft. Let's see. Let's see. There was original World of Warcraft, then the Burning Crusade, then the Wrath of the Lich King. Then there was Cataclysm, if I'm remembering the order correctly. And then there was Mists of Pandaria. I got in the middle of Cataclysm. And I was thrilled to, I'm a furry. I'm a furry fan. I like the Pandarians, the panda people. I was like, yay, and all the other people were going, yeah. And I say, you wussies. And but anyway, I'll tell you, Pandaria. It's very different. It's Chinese themed, of course, pseudo Chinese anyway, and it's very different from most of the other uh, areas. It's got a lot more of a sense of humor about itself. Uh, some of the jokes and such are just absolutely hilarious, just funny as heck. I'm sort of it's not perfect. It's got some problems with it, and but overall it's got a much lighter mood than the other areas of Azeroth, and I think that's what's flying up. I think that's what flies up most of these uh, World of Warcraft fanatics' noses. I just keep picturing this 15-year-old basement dweller with a massive pimples on his face, screaming at his computer screen, "Take my level 45 Death Knight seriously!" You know, how dare you make jokes at me? Serious business. Ah, quite frankly, the Pandarians there is a lot of slapstick humor, and I enjoyed it. I enjoy a good bit of it. The thing of it is, I've never played it. I've got several characters that have gone through the area. I've never played it all the way through. Never. I haven't really played any of the areas all the way through. Well, actually, I played no, actually, I didn't play Legion all the way through either. I've never done any particular expansion. I'm not a completist, to say the least. It leaves a lot of stuff for the next character I make to do. But anyway, there is one mission. There is one mission. Uh, there's a lot of missions where you're expected to actually help characters out, and one of your early on missions in Pandaria is you have to go, if you're playing Alliance, is that you have to go rescue a bunch of kidnapped Pandarian cubs. Rescue them from a horde base. I'm like, yeah, and yet the Pandarians are supposed to be waffling on whether to join the Alliance or the Horde. Gee, do we join the Alliance? Or do we join the guys that kidnapped our children? Anyway, the little kids, the little panda kids are just adorable. Little guy comes up to you. Well, anyway, you're one of the missions is out in the Heartlands. They have farmlands, and this one little panda kid, can you help me, sir? I have problems with, can you help me save my sheep? And you're like, yes, I will help you, adorable little teddy bear child. And so you go over there, and what it is that the kid is supposed to be a shepherd in training, a shepherd boy, and he's terrified for his life because there are wolves the size of horses raiding his sheep pen, and there are raptors, birds of prey, big enough to carry off a whole sheep in their claws, swooping down and stealing his sheep. The sheep are bigger than he is. And I'm like, who's, you don't think about it at first. You say, wait a minute, who put you out here? Who put you out here? The kid doesn't even have a shepherd's crook, and he's supposed to fend off wolves and giant raptors. And you have to go out and you have to rescue the sheep. You have to kill a bunch of the buzzards and a bunch of the wolves, and then you have to kill the leader of the pack of the wolves, who is twice as big as any of them, and kill one of the giant eagles that is flying overhead with a rope. Anyway, well, first off, you kill off this giant wolf, and you kill, and you tell the kid this, and you turn in the mission, and then his boss shows up, and he's like, what is wrong with you, boy? We need to speak, Francis. If you would just show some courage. And I'm like, the kid's half the size of your livestock that is being carted off into the sky by flesh-eating birds. This isn't cowardice. This is a survival instinct. And what you didn't even give it. You. And he looks at you, and then the boss looks at you. Would you please show him what it means to have courage? And he says, would you please lasso and kill one of those giant eagles that's flying overhead to show him what courage is? And he gives you a rope. And let's put it this way: you spend you lasso one of those birds. You spend the entire battle with the damn thing in midair, riding on its back, trying to kill it. And I looked at this guy. I looked at this, Pandaren master. I'm like, you're a dick. You ought to change your shepherd boy's name to Bite-Sized, you jackass. She says, man, and you just want to, you just want to be like, you have no agency as a player in World of Warcraft. That's one of the things. It's been, a lot of, hardcore gamers have said World of Warcraft is a, what they call a, how did they put it? An amusement park ride. They said is because you get in, you are on the rails, and all the decisions you make, all the choices you make, none of them make any difference. It doesn't change the outcome of the war that you happen to be fighting. It doesn't change whether it doesn't change which side wins. It doesn't change anything. It doesn't change the outcome of the story in any way. And this was especially obvious in Pandaria. First rule of being a game master, being a dungeon master, is your character, your players are going to be on rails of some sort. The trick is to never let them see the rails. And they broke that rule hard in Pandaria. Because there's nothing. The peak of the game is where you arrive at the Vale of Eternal Blossoms. It's like their most important and sacred. It's like I'm trying to think of a term for it. It's like the hidden city of China. And it's this, when you first get there, it's this beautiful garden, right? With huge, there's one big, uh, one big embassy temple type thing for the Horde and one for the Alliance. But that's where the next level up. And then, well, basically, the ongoing conflict is that the land of Pandaria has these evil spirits called the Shah that feed on negative emotion and arise up out of the ground of Pandaria if there's too much strife and war and supposedly if there's too much strife and war and conflict and hate, that they'll come boiling up out of the ground and start plaguing the countryside, and you spend a lot of time killing off the Shah that allegedly are the fault of your faction for being in their beautiful country. You basically you disrupted their chi or something by being in their country. Bringing your warmongering ways, and eventually this comes to a head when the leader, the war chieftain of the Horde, Garrosh Hailscream, just basically busts loose in the Vale of Eternal Blossoms. And and the war breaks on the and then big Uber Shah explodes up out of the ground and everybody has to fight him. And then they have to go and bring down Garrosh Hailscream before he can stir up any more trouble. But the thing of it is, the thing of it is that at the end of it, the Pandarians blame both of you. They blame the Horde and they blame the Alliance. And I'm like, you panda a-hole. Because and you're supposed to feel guilty about this. You're supposed to feel like absolute crap. Because you're an evil warmongering outsider who's brought your violent ways into their peaceful. Well, first of all, it's a load of crap. Because the Pandarians have all sorts of strife and violence going on in their country that have nothing to do with either the Horde or the Alliance. The Hosen, the baboon people, they got baboon people, they got insect people, they got yak people, and they're all waging and everybody's battling with they got a war going on there constantly themselves, but somehow it's your fault for bringing your warmongering ways into their country. Uh-huh. And there's this one race of dog-faced giants that used to rule the continent of Pandaria, and they kept the Pandarians as slaves, and they were overthrown thousands of years ago, and they're still out there wreaking havoc and trying to restore their empire. And so but it's your fault for bringing war to their country. And on top of it all, it's clear from the very beginning that there is no matter what you do, no matter what choices you make, uh, uh, nothing will prevent the outcome, which is the destruction of the Vale of Eternal Blossoms. Well, it isn't completely destroyed. It's wrecked pretty bad, but the temples area. It's still there. It's just torn all to pieces with great big blots of Shah corruption all over the place. I'm like you panda a-holes. It's and to top it all off, they try the writers try so hard. They try so hard to make it look like the Horde and Alliance are just opposite sides, opposite but equal sides. And the Horde players are all for, oh yes, we're just poor persecuted, goblins and orcs and undead cannibals and troll blood worship. It's stupid. Right from the beginning, I don't play Horde characters. I don't like playing Horde because even just playing a regular character, you're forced to participate in things that you're going, okay, evil. And as a player, you're not given any agency. Again, what I'm saying is that no matter what you do, the outcome is the same. The outcome is always the same, and there's nothing you could do to have prevented what happened. There's nothing you could do to choose a different outcome, and that just flew up everybody's noses. That the game was lecturing them. The game was lecturing the players on the fact that they did not change the unchangeable. How dare you be stuck on these rails we glued you to? And I believe that is the main reason, the main real reason that so many people turn their noses up at the Pandaria expansion. And it bugs me too. Seriously. I mean, it's the one choice you can make if you play a Pandarian. The Pandarians are the only race that can choose, where the player can choose whether they join the Horde or the Alliance. And I'm like, and everybody complained about that. And the game designer said, we hated that. We didn't want to do that. I'm like, why? Why aren't they doing this with all the races? One of the pet beefs that the socially sensitive types have is that these kind of games stereotype. They present the idea that race is destiny. And that if you were born in a certain race, that you're going to be like that, and and you have no choice in the matter. And that's what they criticized Tolkien for. That's what they criticized the Brian Jacques for. How do you pronounce that? Brian Jacques, Jacques. Brian Jacques. He wrote the Redwall series, and and so on down the line. And they criticize science fiction and fantasy fans in general for doing that, because it's supposedly us sublimating our racist impulses by creating always chaotic evil races. They criticized Star Trek for it. They criticized Dungeons and Dragons, and you'd think that presented with the opportunity and the chance that they would at least try to break that trend, try and do something novel and interesting. That would have been an epic change. Let everybody, let the players in World of Warcraft choose Let them choose whatever race they want, and let them choose whatever side of the crusade they want. If they want to play alliance, let them play alliance. If they want to play horde, let them play horde. In fact, I think going with the lore, if they were going to be consistent with the lore that is found in the game, they would have way more than 2 factions. They would have at least 4 or 5. Because I'm sorry, nobody in their right mind would trust the warlock. They just got out of. They've been basically fighting a war. It turns out that behind it all, they've been fighting a war. At first by proxy, but then toe to toe with a legion of demons. The legion, who were basically up until the end of the last expansion, basically responsible for everything bad that was going wrong with Azeroth. Originally the invading orcs in the first World of Warcraft were the slaves of the demons. So it goes all the way back. But you got to figure, okay, nobody would trust the undead anymore. Nobody would trust the Forsaken, because in the lore, the Forsaken in every expansion, the Forsaken have backstabbed everyone. Even at times of epic crisis, when both sides were supposed to be working together to try and save the world, they would backstab both the Alliance and the Horde. But they're still Horde members. You figure that the Horde would say, "Screw you, get out of here." You've got the undead, the Forsaken, who act like they're still slaves of the Lich King. You've got the Warlocks, who are in league with the Legion for the sake of obtaining power. And you've got the Demon Hunters, who are batshit crazy enough to drink, demon essence to try and give themselves demon powers, so that they could fight evil with evil. And and they're about as stable as a Jenga tower on a San Francisco fault. So you got to figure those guys would be, the undead, and they would be the Evil Dead faction over here. And then you've got the nature lovers, the Night Elves, and the Tauren, and the High Mountain Tauren. They would be over here. The tree hugging hippie types. The goblins, orcs, and trolls would be over here in the "we want to conquer everything and spill axle grease all over it after we've conquered it" group. The conquerors, the invading, conquest-obsessed types. And the humans, the blood elves, the dwarves, and the gnomes would be over here. The races that are focused on building up or rebuilding their civilization. The builders. That pretty much sums up the gnomes and the dwarves and the humans. And since the blood elves are basically trying to rebuild their lost, high elf empire, they would go there. So you're looking at least 4 groups. And that presents a lot more, divide those races up into 4 factions. Let the player choose which faction they want to go to. The potential, the gaming potential is just explosive. And if they could maybe, that's the thing of it is that with a more with an online game like this is, it's one thing to create a console game that you can sit at home and you can play it, or a game you can play on your home computer, and you can have your choice. Your decisions can affect the final outcome. But when you got when you got millions of players all playing the same game, what are you going to do? You're going to tailor a specific ending outcome for each and every one of them? Oh my. I do believe it is starting to rain outside. I'm trying to see here. I can't tell. I'm playing rain in the background here, so I can't tell. We're supposed to be getting there. Let's see, what did I send? Okay, yeah, good. I've sent it off. There we go. There's so much potential, you know what I'm saying? I don't know anything about programming games, so I don't know what kind of support you'd need to expand the World of Warcraft like that, to make it more expansive, to make it larger, to make it more flexible, for lack of a better word. Excuse me one moment. Now, riddle me this, I have no idea, as a I have no idea what kind of programming it would take. I have no idea what kind of art, I don't know what the term is, digital architecture it would take to make a World of Warcraft like I'm describing. But dong, we've got open sandbox games like Eve Online that are able to handle something thousands of times more complex. Now, I've said this before. I told you about WildStar, the game that's basically dying at the end of this month. Now, the sad thing is that WildStar, they missed an opportunity. They made the same, bilateral symmetry mistake that World of Warcraft did. That's the reason I think WildStar is highly innovative. Gameplay, art style, combat. Even in how you, even in the role that various classes take. For instance, you're in WildStar, your healers can also pinch hit as tanks. and they have incredibly heavy firepower, close range firepower too, close range, wide area is what I'm saying, and the stealth, the rogues, are much nastier in melee, and just little improvements they made, just very innovative, but it wasn't innovative enough. Like I said, they went to the same old formula. You know, alliance on one side, horde on the other, or in this case, the heroic rebel, the rebel outlaw exiles versus the tyrannical empire dominion. Then they tried to claim that both sides were, both, and then they tried to do the thing that World of Warcraft did, and try to claim that both sides were, neither side is, completely right. Neither one's in the right. Though it was very obvious which side was the heroes and which one was the villains. Pull the other one, yank it hard, it plays jingle bells. Now, if they had gone with my idea, if they had done like what I'm suggesting here, first of all, they split everything down the middle, and then they assigned races to each side. If they had gone with letting every player choose the faction they wanted to belong to, and if they had more than two factions, right from the start, they would have had a much more expansive game, a much more interesting and complex gameplay. And it would have been a lot more feasible to believe that all the different sides each had their own points. You could even you could even have the one faction would be the basically the Slytherin house, and be absolutely utterly evil, so that everybody could feel better. Well, at least we're not those guys. But no. Of course, they're never smart enough to have me around to give them advice and to, counsel them on this thing. If they just keep me around, and pay me to, spout off my crap, when, it would have been so much better. Right. It's a leftist illusion, though. It's a leftist illusion. What do I mean by that? I mean that whether you're talking WildStar or World of Warcraft, they both also had this similar theme: the idea that as the game progresses, you reach a point where there comes along a crisis that's threatening the entire world. There's this horrible crisis that's threatening the entire world, and both sides have to realize we're not so different. Put down their, put down their animosity, and work together to save the world from this particular threat. For instance, in WildStar, it's the discovery that the Elden, the ancient race that built the planet Nexus that everybody's squabbling over, they were basically, the Nexus is basically a gigantic laboratory experiment. And the goal of the aliens experiment, the goal of the Elden's experiment, was basically to create a cosmic being who would literally be able to rewrite the laws of physics as she liked. That they would be able to ignore the laws of physics and do whatever they darn well pleased. And their entire race invested into this project, and it killed them. because they succeeded in making the cosmic entity. The problem is that the cosmic entity promptly split in two. Had a split personality. One personality is good, kind, angelic. The other personality is this mad, festering demonic thing that wants to infest the universe with a plague that devours all life. And they're both trapped in the same body. And so, of course, the alliance, the outcasts and the Dominion, eventually as the story progresses along, you're supposed to reach a point where you all unite together to save the universe. And well, in World of Warcraft, they do that with every expansion. Wrath of the Lich King, it was the Lich King. Cataclysm, it was Deathwing. What was the next one? Warlords of Draenor, it was the Iron Horde, which was basically the ogres, the orcs from another timeline, invading Azeroth. And then there was Warlords of Draenor, and then what came after Warlords of Draenor? Legion, where the real big bads show up and everybody has to unite to stop that. Sort of unite. And this one, it's supposed to be, no more of that united crap. It's Battle for Azeroth, Horde versus Alliance, Alliance versus Horde. But the problem is that meanwhile, the last, the demon god that got defeated, his last screw you to the planet was to drive a giant sword into Azeroth. And basically, Azeroth is slowly bleeding to death. And guess what? What we're all going to have to put down our differences and work together to save the planet again. This is a leftist fantasy. This is one that the leftists kept coming up with in pop culture when we were going through the Cold War. We're not so, they were all walking around, oh, we're not so different from the communists. We're not so different from the Soviet Union. Except for the mass genocide thing, And we need to all put our, we all need to turn our swords into plowshares and work together in harmony and in so many different fiction works, they would keep coming up with scenarios where the Americans and the Soviets suddenly have to work together to prevent catastrophe. Oi. The guy with the rabbit ears, that's me. Back when I was healthier looking. Yeah, the first thing they do is they insist, us and them, we're not so different. And then they insist, oh, if we're not so different, then we can work together. The problem is, we are different. Okay? America and the Soviet Union were polar opposites, and the Soviet Union died a deserving death. Those people in Germany weren't dancing in the streets to celebrate the New Year's Eve. They were tearing down the wall the wall in Berlin. To celebrate the end of communist tyranny. I'm tired of people equating America with the Soviet Union. I'm tired of people equating Western civilization with Muslim quote unquote civilization, and trying to say, oh, we need to put our differences aside and work together with, in harmony and all this. They're not interested in working in harmony with us. They want to conquer us. Just like always, the bad guys want to conquer us. They want to conquer us. They either want to enslave us or kill us, and probably do both if they can figure out a way to do it. This, they want us to give away and destroy what makes us unique for the sake of an illusionary unity with people who despise our very existence. No, and it keeps cropping up in pop culture over and over again. Like I say, in these games where first they divide the players up into camps of good versus evil, and then they try and pretend that good and evil aren't all that different. That thought alone should send you running into the streets looking for help. Excuse me a minute. Be back in a minute. Sorry over there. Just had to get some dinner. Yeah, that's one thing that doesn't seem to come out very often. Mass shooters, these mass shooting incidents, you look at nearly all of them, they all have one thing in common. The shooter was on some sort of psychotropic drug, usually prescribed. Just gives you all sorts of warm fuzzies to think about, doesn't it? Let's see here. We got RH Vet, Archangel Primeval Core, YouTuber, and J. Scott Raymond. Oh yeah, life extension, and yeah, what you're saying here. The attitude is that it's come out in most of my stories. That I believe that if some means of extending human life exists, we should take it. There is no moral conflict. Which is better, to do harm or to do good, to heal or to kill? Life extension, that's what we used to call medicine. Not dieology. Keep breathing ism. Frankly, even if I would, I'm trying to spit it out. I could live with having a lifespan of only 80 to 100 years if they could guarantee that those 80 to 100 years would be spent in good health, in a strong, healthy, pain-free body. As it is, we start falling apart in our 30s, and by the time we actually reach those 100 years, we look like beef jerky. Maybe it's a little bit too soon about talking about living forever. Could we concentrate on living the next few weeks, the next few years? No, it's crazy. We as one guy put it, did they develop a pill so that have they developed a pill that you can take so that your body continues to function into your sunset years? No. Do they come up with a pill that will keep your mind clear and functional and sharp? All the way to to the day you shuffle off this mortal coil? No. Can they come up with a pill to make an 80-year-old man harder than Chinese algebra? Oh yeah, we got that covered. Of course, the funny thing is that most people don't realize is that Viagra it was developed. It was a result of research into improving heart health. The heart and circulation health is supposed to increase the heart rate. Increase. I forget what exactly. Increase blood flow, blood pressure. Did those things, just not quite in the way they expected. How would you like to have been in the control group? How would you like to have been in the test group for that one? This pill is supposed to make you, is supposed to revitalize your energy and make you feel healthier. So here you go. Oh, this is great. Not the result we're looking for, but I think we're on to something. Oh Lord, I don't know how much longer I'm going to be on. I'm putting. I was planning on originally going to. I was planning originally on running another show on midnight, but I'm like, no, nope, don't think so. Don't think so. Nope. I'd like to do. I'd like to, forget mattresses. Just give me, like give me a mattress, but forget all the, just give me like 300-400 pillows. Pile them on top of the bed, and I'll just burrow in and stay that way. That's how I'd like to see. That's part of the inspiration. You remember the design of the Raconas, the bevy nests. They have the young children especially. Their bed is usually a cubbyhole in the wall. It's up off the ground, and it's a curtained little doorway into a circular area that's filled up with pillows and blankets and stuff. And I'm like, I was looking around the internet and discovered an architect who had stumbled across the same idea as me. And I'm like, dang, I'm a genius. Let me see if I can find it. I've brought this up before, but I just love to bring it up. Let's see here. Let's see. Roger Dean. Here we go. Roger Dean. Yeah. Now, Roger Dean as the guy who. Roger Dean is the guy who painted the album covers for Asia, if you know him at all. That's not it. Here we go. Roger Dean's official page. He was the guy that painted all those beautiful album covers for Asia, and several others apparently. Let's see here, photos. Let's see here. Oh, darn it! Where do we trying to find bigger images, but well, you can see that there. Let me see if I can find. There's one particular image that has basically been associated with him for ages. Absolutely beautiful artwork. Let's see here. Here we go. That's from the Asia album. I forget which one, but very beautiful stuff. But he is also an architect. Architecture. Here we go.
Now, the interesting thing is that he and I paralleled quite a bit. He's got designs called the Home for Life. Now, look at these. These are very reminiscent of what I was shooting for with the Rakonen house designs. A lot more smooth and loopy, but yeah. This is the adult bedroom, and as you can see, this is the interesting thing. He noted this that the stairs go in a clockwise curve, and he said he originally was going to do it counterclockwise, but then he wasn't very comfortable with that, and he didn't know why. And he looked it up, and it turns out now you look in towers in many medieval castles, the stairs going up to the walls, the stairs going up, the spiral stairways going up, they always rotated clockwise, because that way, since most people were right-handed and carried their weapons in their right hand, a defender could come down the stairs with a weapon free in his hand. He would be coming down. He'd have his he would be have his shield arm to the wall, and his sword arm out and free. While the person coming up, while the invader coming up the stairs, would be forced to have his sword arm to the wall, making it much more difficult for him. This and generally speaking, it was designing the stairwell that way so that it's subconsciously more comfortable. Well, that's not the well. It's more comfortable that way because your dominant hand is free when you come down the stairs. Now here's the children's bedroom. You'll note there's the bed, just like I described it from my own books. A little stairway up and a cubby hole in the wall. They don't have the curtain up there, but and he did something that most people never seem to do. He asked kids what they would like their bed to be like, what their sleeping area to be like, and they described it like this. And he said he noticed that it had certain things in common: up off the ground, someplace where things couldn't get underneath it, surrounded on all but on three sides. It was all generally about feeling enclosed, up off the ground, away from any potential dangers, safe and secure. And I'm like, I'm grokking this guy. I'm on a brainwave with him. He does a lot of he doesn't do very many corners. And this was the sort of organic look. This is very close to the sort of organic look I was struggling to make for the Rakonen villages and houses and such. Instead, I ended up with something that looked like a lopsided Smurf village, I think. He does beautiful artwork, though. He does beautiful stuff. Yeah, well, this interesting is that this hobbitish look, as you put it, seems to keep cropping up in people that want to, if they could design a house any way they wanted it to, that it would look like these. I sort of wonder if it isn't some sort of collective human unconscious thing. The houses we ended up with, with tall, high walls, rectangular, just hard rectangular buildings with tall, high, and thin, and those were due mostly to the pressures and the necessities of designing in a modern city. Very little ground space. Just not much room for innovation. You know what I'm saying? What do? We have these cities, and they only have so much space. So what do? They build straight up, rigid little boxes. And when you get out into the countryside, we're stuck in a habit. So we build all these little square houses all right next to each other. And we give everybody the fishy eyeball if they do anything unusual with the space that God gives them. We've got idiots living out in Arizona trying to grow green grass lawns. They can be in the middle of a water shortage and their housing, their homeowners association will threaten to fine them for letting their grass get brown. They had one family. This was you wouldn't have heard of it. It was a civil case it was a lawsuit in one small town out in the middle of for crying out loud, Arizona. Uh, the family had said, this is a waste of time, it's a waste of money, it's a waste of energy. You have to cultivate it and you have to baby it constantly. And they looked at it and said, lawn is a waste of time. So that what they did is instead of a lawn, they landscaped with desert plants around their house. And from what I told it looked very nice. And people threw a screaming fit. Homeowners associations are a blasphemy against human rights, including the rights to private property. If you own something, you should own it. You should be the one who decides its layout and its outcome and its inevitable fate. It should not be some busybody bimbet who lives down at the end of the street and managed to get elected to the local housing associate. No, that's just crap. I paid for it. It's mine to decide to do with what I please. If you don't like it, piss up a rope. Well, anyway, they started. They were sued for doing something sane. And the thing of it was is that their town they were in the middle of a drought, and there were all sorts of water shortage alerts, and every house on that street had lawn sprinklers going in the middle of the blazing August heat, just trying to keep those little green lawns from withering away. Meanwhile, their yard was thriving. But because it wasn't the traditional lawn, they were given all sorts of hell. This happened to somebody in New York City. They got rid of the lawn. They planted wildflowers. They turned their yard into a meadow of wildflowers. It's absolutely beautiful. And people threw a screaming fit. And then one son of a bitch waited until they were out. They were out, that the family was out of the house, sneaked over, and used a riding mower to mow the whole yard flat. Several $100s worth of hand planted flowers mowed flat. They never caught the guy. People are dedicated to being stupid. How many cases have they had of kids building tree houses or forts out in their own yards, and the neighbors start, just throw a temper tantrum and sue and get them to get it torn down? What kind of a butt sniffer do you have to be? I find myself constantly overtaken with the unchristian desire to just pick out a crowbar and run through certain neighborhoods, thinning out the herd. P.J. O'Rourke wrote a book called Parliament of Whores. That's a rather pithy description given by another writer of what exactly Congress was. Basically, the book he looked at various governmental institutions, great and small, around the world. It's a very good read. P.J. O'Rourke is a great author. He's funny as heck too. A very very pithy humorist. And at the beginning of the book and at the close, he was talking about a hometown city hall meeting. And at the end of the book, what it was is that, and he just he just described all the idiocies that the city council got up to in that one meeting. But the centerpiece is that there was a group of people. They had bought some property on the outskirts of town, and they were trying to build a golf course there. And everybody had gathered together, and they sat down and everybody was there complaining that they didn't want it to happen. It wasn't going to do a thing to them. They just didn't like it. And so these people, these city councilmen, the mayor, and all these people sitting in the audience conspired together and came up with whole new, and passed a whole new regulation specifically targeting this company and forcing them to, trying to force them to abandon the project. And P.J. O'Rourke concluded these people were not New Yorkers. These people weren't from Berkeley or California. These people, from the American heartland, New Hampshire, one of the most libertarian states in the Union, and They had just sat down. They had all just sat down and abused their power of government to deny another human being the right to do what they wanted with their own property. And he pointed out the Parliament of Whores is us. Oh, you party off to pardon me. I just didn't realize I had drifted off there. I didn't realize I'd fallen quiet for so long. Yeah, it's a rough life. It's a rough world. I'm going to try and do up at least a couple of pages of Questor tomorrow. Just, I don't know. I don't know why I'm so. Mm, mm. Getting tuckered again. Running out of things to say or to rant about. I think it's I think it's time for me to go. Once again, thank you all for for tuning in again. Listen to me yap my face off for a little while. I need the human contact. I do. I really do. If I could just figure out a way to get somebody to deliver groceries out in this area, I'd be set. I've bitched about that so many times. It drives me crazy. Every time I find somebody who will do odd jobs for me, no matter what I pay them, no matter what I do, no matter what I say, within within a couple months they drift off. Suddenly I can't find them no more. Suddenly they get up and leave, move entirely, or something. Just you know and here I am high and dry again. So I'm going to go ahead and call it a night. Once again, uh, I'll probably run another show tomorrow night. Pick up. I really need to hunt around for some topics. You know, so something new to talk about other than the pop culture immediate. Well, I will see you all tomorrow, maybe. You all take care of yourselves. You all have a good night, all right? All right.